Hi guys, Nick Thompson here, and we are going to be talking this morning about the Raw Feeding Veterinary Society and new concepts in pet nutrition. My name is Nick Thompson. My email is nickthompson@holisticvet.co.uk, and I'm really pleased to be here speaking to you today. I'm just going to put the machine onto the presenter view, and we're going to talk about some key ideas today. We've got 45 minutes to go, and so I'm going to crack on because there's an awful lot to discuss. Okay, so and what I'm going to do to help the editor is I'm going to try, and every time I change a slide I'm going to say new slide, so new slide. The human nutrition world has gone through a major revolution in the last 30 years, and I don't think that the veterinary world is keeping up. It was started by the love-hate figure of Dr. Robert Atkins, who was working on previous work, but basically he made very prominent the idea of feeding a high protein, high fat, low carb diet, primarily low grain carb diet, as you see in the picture. A lot of vegetables about, which is what everybody forgets when they think about Atkins. He was able to make people lose weight by eating as much of this type of food as they wanted, and that was a remarkable concept, really, because it went in the face of everything that had been taught previously, where ever since the Second World War, with Ancel Keys coming along, saying that fat causes fat, and fat causes heart disease in people, and fat causes strokes and all this kind of stuff in people. And that has been the overriding concept within veterinary medicine, and still is. This is the problem. And so really what I'm doing today is showing that this dichotomy between where even the NHS in the UK is catching on to this concept, but veterinary medicine's not. We are still feeding loads of high carb kibble to our pets and wondering why they're all getting fat, so, and why they're getting diabetes and all sorts of diseases. So this is kind of where we're going to go with today. So there he is. That's Robert Atkins, and here he is again. And again, I'm pleased to say that we have got plenty of greens and goodness there. He's even got a glass of wine, which is great news. And as you see, even the greats don't mind having a skylight in the background. Okay, so the current concepts, new slide by the way, current concepts, new slides, current concepts are led primarily, or you could say that they've been brought together by this guy Gary Taubes. He's done a book called The Case Against Sugar, where he is making the argument that Ancel Keys and the fat makes you fat, and the fat raises your cholesterol and gives you heart disease theory is completely out of time. It no longer fits with the science that we have today. So if you could get a chance to read that book, Gary Taubes, The Case Against Sugar, it's a great idea. New slide. Another book, this is a UK, Professor Tim Spector, took 5 years to write this book because he had heart issues, even though he was eating pretty well. And so he basically just looked at all the diets that people are talking about and tried to look at where's the science behind it all. And his conclusion was a low carb diet is very healthy, and he's a big fan of raw cheeses and any food that can promote a diverse microbiome within the gut and it's a fantastic read. If practical note, if you haven't got time to read books like me, then many of these books are available on audiobooks, and I use Audible. Other Audible book platforms are available. So there you go. The Diet Myth is there. Really, really great. Another prominent nutritionist, new slide, is this guy, Professor Tim Noakes, and he was a massive advocate of high carb nutrition for extreme sport, like ultra marathons and what have you, and he just completely changed his thinking over a very short period, and started shouting about his new revolutionary ideas. And he's a South African, and the South African Nutrition Board took him to court, and he fought a very long, nasty case against them, and he won. All right, so as the book says, challenging conventional dietary beliefs. Okay, the next person that I would suggest you might want to read is this really lovely guy called Dr. Jason Fung, and he's recently written a book, new slide. Ooh, that didn't come out. That just needs to be flipped over, and it's called The Obesity Code, and hopefully the editor will be able to just flip those two over for me. And they're all saying the same thing. It's the carbs that will kill you. It's not fat that makes you fat and gives you heart attacks and strokes. Okay, and they were all incredulous with this concept because they, like you and I, have been raised on the fat makes you fat concept, which is what the kibble brigade are still using as their watchword. Okay, so there's a major problem here, and so those are all human nutritionists. There is an animal nutritionist who is barking up the same tree. In 2011, Dr. Richard Patton came out with a book called Ruined by Excess, Perfected by Lack, which is a clunky title. Sorry, Richard, if you're watching this, but it actually does tell you exactly what we're talking about. Ruined by excess. It means the current unfortunate pets are being given an excess of carbohydrates, whereas throughout history these carbs have been in very, very, very short supply. So they were perfected by lack throughout history, and then that perfect system is being overwhelmed with every meal, as with most humans in the West, with just too much carb. I'll tell you about that, and I'll show you some nice graphics a little bit later on. So that's kind of how I came to all this stuff, probably about 5 years ago or so now, because I've been going down the fat makes you fat route, and you know how many calories you feed your cat, your dog, is the overwhelming determinant of whether they gain weight or lose weight. But that's only part of the story, and that the feeding endocrinologically active foods like carbs and sugars, which bump up insulin, and it's the insulin that does the damage. Okay, Gary Taubes is probably the guy who will explain that most clearly for you. But let's just give you an example of a human paper which really spells this out for me. This is a landmark study, came out of Israel in 2008, and you see there's a lot of people involved in this study there, all of whom think that this is a great idea, by the way. And they compared 3 lots of about 500 people on 3 types of diet. Okay, so we've got 3 types of diet. The first diet was low carb, unlimited calories. Okay, so it's classic kind of Atkins approach. Low carb, unlimited calories. The second group was a Mediterranean diet, and that was capped. The calories were capped. And the third is the classic kind of Weight Watchers, or the old NHS story, which was if you reduce your calories, you will lose weight. Okay, which is not untrue, but it's not the whole story. Okay, so we've got these three groups: 500 people, 500 people, 500 people. They're all overweight or obese. Okay, which group do you think lost the weight most effectively and kept it off most effectively? Obviously, it's the low carbohydrate group. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given you the introduction. And so, this is what we're seeing. That, for me, kind of spells it out. We've got two groups where they've got restricted calories, and they do not lose weight as effectively and sustainably as the low carb group, who can eat as much as they like. Okay, which suggests that people, cats and dogs, are very well adapted to looking after their own body condition score if they are given a more species appropriate low carb diet. Okay, so if you want to look at that kind of if you want to look at our history, this idea of perfected by lack, ruined by excess, it kind of looks a bit like that. And new slide. And it's interesting to see that the guy on the right hand side there, who is the classic obese Western individual, is carrying a fizzy drink, a soda, which is probably 20% sugar. Okay, it's classic. Okay, and we're doing it to our pets by feeding them kibble. Okay, so in the human world, we see from our graph here, in about 76, the low fat guidelines really kicked in, and immediately, as soon as the low-fat guidelines kicked in, there was an increase in obesity. Yeah, you can see the obesity there. And why is that? It's because when you remove fat from food, it doesn't taste as good. And so they put in carbs to increase the palatability of these lower fat foods. And many corporations made an absolute fortune on the back of the low-fat thing, because it kind of makes sense. If you eat fat, you get fat. However, it is more complex than that. Okay, and next slide was the diabetes and obesity. As we see, not only is obesity increasing since the 70s, 80s, 90s, but actually diabetes. It's no surprise in the human model that where you see more obesity, you see more diabetes, and that is the case with cats. Yeah, cats follow that example with type 2 diabetes. Sorry, that's somebody coming in the front door. Do you like the doorbell? I'm going to just press on. So as things increase, then we see these issues. Okay, and as I was saying, diabetes in humans is very similar to diabetes in cats. They get type 2 diabetes. Dogs, on the other hand, are more similar to type 1 diabetes, which is where the pancreas just stops producing effective levels of insulin. Okay, so in the human, it's either a genetic thing or a congenital thing, but in the dog, it will hit you later on in life, and so we're thinking perhaps there's an autoimmune effect there. But there is also a correlation between obesity and the type 1 diabetes, the canine diabetes. Okay, that is recognised, but it's not quite as simple as the feline affair. Okay, so another nice graphic there, ballooning waistlines since 51 to the present era. Waistlines have gone up 24%. Okay, it's just a nice graphic to show what's happening here. This is big stuff. Okay, big stuff. Excuse the pun. So this is mirrored in our dogs. I was at a Royal Canin seminar a couple of months ago, and their statistics. Okay, this is from Royal Canin, and they're saying that 65% of dogs in the UK are obese. Okay, and it's similar for cats, which is a disgrace, second only to the fact that people are going in the same direction. Okay, and guess what? Diet is a big part of that whole that whole picture. So dogs and cats are going the same way as we are, and I think that there's a massive correlation with diet, and of that, carbs is a big part. Okay, if we look at Banfield, who are owned by Mars, I believe, and as in Mars bars, as in carbohydrate, by the way, as in Royal Canin. As here we see, their figures are showing, new slide, that diabetes in cats and dogs is increasing over the last 10 years. Okay, despite their best efforts. Yeah, Royal Canin make food. They're desperately trying to improve obesity rates, and not really having much effect, in my opinion, and desperately trying to help with the war on diabetes in cats and dogs, and not really winning that one either. Okay, one of the most convincing arguments for this whole idea that the cats and dogs and humans have evolved in a low carb environment is by looking at the physiology. New slide. We're looking at the control of blood glucose and nutrient storage, and so there are hormones to reduce blood sugar when it becomes excessive, and there are within the body of cats, dogs, and humans to increase blood sugar. Okay, and if we compare those, we look at the number of hormones to reduce blood sugar, and we compare that with the number to increase blood sugar. That's going to give us an idea of the importance that Mother Nature puts on to, or if you don't like that concept, that evolution has given us, in that if we evolved in a high carb environment, we would have a lot of mechanisms to reduce blood sugar, and if we evolved in a low carb, which is mine and many others' hypothesis, then we're going to have many mechanisms. Okay, so let's just think about this. Hormones to reduce blood sugar. Okay, have a little think. Hormones to reduce blood sugar. What do you think? Okay, yeah, insulin, one. Okay, now have a think. Hormones to increase blood sugar. Okay, what are you thinking? Yeah, okay, glucocorticoids, glucagon, maybe adrenaline. Yeah, okay, these are the ones that spring to mind. So at least already we've got 3-to-1 ratio of these two homeostatic opposing forces. Okay, but actually there's at least 8 mechanisms, and I think that slide alone is a really strong argument to say that feeding species inappropriate diets that are high carb is anathema to health in humans and pets. Okay, New slide. And why is that important? Important because you can only make kibble with about 30 to 50% carb to hold the whole thing together. If you don't have the carb there to bind it all, to glue all the ingredients together, you get a sack full of dust. Okay, so the kibble manufacturers are bound to use, forgive the pun, they have to use some carbohydrate. Okay, so I see this and the reluctance of the industry to admit that this high carb food is bad is a little bit like the cigarette manufacturers in the 60s and 70s, when in the 50s the studies came out to link smoking and lung cancer, and yet in the 60s and 70s the cigarette manufacturers were going, okay, cigarettes are bad for you, but they're not that bad for you, and they were trying to fight long court cases because they were trying to delay this inevitability of the realization that there is a direct correlation between what you smoked and your health. And here we have the correlation between what you eat and your health. Gary Taubes says that sugar could be considered the new smoking, or sugar is to your general health what smoking is to lung health. Okay, and I'm not exaggerating this. Okay, I really think that this is a valid analogy between these two elements. So if we just take an average, and I did pick this at random, this is just an average product. Royal Canin, it could have been a Eukanuba, it could have been a Hills. There are many other kibble manufacturers, and we just look at the ingredients. New slide. So here's the ingredients slide, and okay, so you've got the ingredients there, but how much carbohydrate is there? Difficult to see. What's the analytical constituents? No, don't know how much carbohydrate there is there. And also, by the way, in Europe, FEDIAF is the nutritional body, the equivalent of the AAFCO, and they have no guidelines on carbohydrate whatsoever. And you could interpret that as being that there's no requirement for carbohydrate, but you could also, it would also be taken by the manufacturers to have absolutely free reign to put as much or as little carbohydrate, because it's unregulated. Yeah, just as when you went to, in the 50s, you'd go to see your doctor and they would offer you a cigarette, totally unregulated. Now, this is what carbohydrate is like now, okay? It's ironic that we're doing it all over again. However, if you look carefully right down, how many down? I don't know, about 10 down there, we've got the NFE, nitrogen-free extract, which is code for the carbohydrate levels. And this is just an average kibble, remember? It's a Royal Canin urban dog. And look at that. 42%. Okay, that's like 42% of every single meal you take contains pasta or potato. Okay, is it any wonder all these poor kibble-fed dogs are expanding at the rate of knots? Okay, so that's just an average. There are other foods. I don't want to get sued by Royal Canin. Okay, so that's an average food. Now let's look at diets designed to reduce weight, and how are we doing it? How are the kibble companies doing it? That's right, they're reducing the calories. Good idea. I'll leave you to have a think about that. So here we go. Classic reducing diet. with reduced calories. See, it says low calorie, okay? Completely forgetting the fact that they are high in carb, okay? Both these diets high in carb. This is the canine version, okay? So feeding dogs a carbohydrate is pretty much a terrible idea, but feeding an obligate carnivore a high carbohydrate diet in the thought that it's going to make them lose weight in the most metabolically efficient way is very strange. Let's have a look at the carbohydrate levels in there, and they have it. New slide. Even in those reducing diet, we've got 35% of the meal is cooked carbohydrates. So that's like pasta, 35% pasta with every meal. Ooh. And this is considered industry standard, obviously. Okay. Even if we look at a diabetic, new slide, a diabetic diet. This is Royal Canin diabetic canine diet. The NFE is 29%. Okay, so it's interesting that maybe they are thinking, let's reduce the carbohydrate in this, because their standard was 42%. Okay, so in their diabetic, they're coming down to 29%, but they can't go much lower than that, because if you put too little, you don't bind up and get a kibble, a biscuit. Okay, so I think that's perhaps a suggestion that they know that carbohydrate, and within the human nutritional community, it is well recognized that carbohydrates, not just sugar, will massively contribute to diabetes and to diabetic instability. Okay, so this is interesting stuff. So if we're looking, let's conclude this simple concept, and the broad conclusions that we would look at is that the current state of thinking in human nutrition suggests that it's carbs, not just the calories, that are leading to obesity, ill health. Gary Taubes talks about a bit the sugar and refined carbohydrates being associated with high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, cancer, gout, you name it, all the modern ills. He is able to draw a very strong association, a physiological association, fully referenced as well. So in the human arena, there are strong associations, and yet we are behind the times. Kibble, even the grain-free kibble, yeah, I get people coming into me and saying, I'm feeding the healthy one, I'm not feeding just a regular kibble, I'm feeding a healthy one because there's no grain there. And I think that's like the Marlboro coming out with Marlboro Lights, you know. it's obfuscation, it's trying to delay the inevitable decline. And so I pose the question, could this explain why obesity, diabetes and ill health in our pets is rising quite so significantly, and suggest that the high carb diet is ultra species inappropriate. It's inappropriate for human beings who are omnivores. It is inappropriate for dogs who are arguably strongly carnivorous omnivores. But it's incredibly inappropriate for the felines in our lives who are very strongly carnivorous. They're not actually carnivores, they're mousivores, they're birdivores, they're rabbitivores, obviously. But, you know, just for the sake of simplicity, they're obligate carnivores. And feeding them grain is like feeding a horse a steak. It's just crazy. Okay, let's talk about the Raw Feeding Veterinary Society. If anybody watching this webinar is a vet or a vet nurse or a vet tech, then you are totally welcome to come and join us at the Raw Feeding Veterinary Society. You can start your journey at the Hphc2ntd7.info. This is the address for the website, and you'll find everything you need to know there. If you're on Facebook, then we have a Facebook group where we discuss the topics of the day. We have an opinion page where people, they find articles, they find journals, they find blogs, or they have a case that they just want to discuss, or they just like talking about food and raise questions there. So that's the opinion page, and we have the slightly more academic, if you like, the evidence page, where we will look and discuss articles, papers, and a more kind of scientific approach to nutrition, because we are trying to improve our knowledge of nutrition, of raw food and fresh food nutrition, and discussing it and sharing that information is obviously completely key to the whole concept. So these are the two Facebook groups. This is our website, and go and have a look. Even if you're not a vet, you're very welcome to have a look at the website. There are some articles there. You can see just at the top articles, and this is advertising. We are having a conference on the 10th of November, and it is entitled Practical Academic Concepts in Species Appropriate Nutrition, which is kind of a posh way of saying we're all going to get together and we're going to talk about raw and fresh food. We have got some amazing speakers. Ian Billinghurst, one of the two godfathers of raw feeding, is going to be there. We are going to have Connor Brady, who is one of the leading researchers in raw food, coming over from Ireland. We are going to have a number of really key speakers, and they're all listed there. We're very, very excited about that. So Alex German is going to be joining us as well. He is a leading light, a key opinion former professor, Alex German from Liverpool University. He's going to be talking to us about carbohydrates, fats, and nutrition. He is a key advisor to Royal Canin, and so we welcome him to come in and to discuss, the pros and cons, the facts that are available. So it's going to be a really fun time. It's very cheap days, continuing professional development. So, and it's very easy to get to. We're going to hold it, as you see, at the Radisson Blu Hotel, which is at Manchester Airport. So you can just fly into Manchester for the day, talk about food, eat some good food, talk to your colleagues, do some real great networking from around the world, and then zoom home again, unless you want to stick around, in which case we're going to be talking late into the night on the Friday before this Saturday meeting, and we're probably going to be talking late into the night on the Saturday night after the meeting as well. So lots to be done. It's early days. There's going to be new papers being presented. Jonathan Self is a an author and founder of Honey's Pet Nutrition with Vicky Marshall, and he has done some very interesting work on the effect of feeding raw food on physiological parameters, I believe, and he's going to be presenting that new work to us. So, new work, discussion of the state of nutrition, it's all going to be there, and so you're very, very welcome to come and join us for that. Hphc2ntd7.info. Come along, talk about raw food, fresh food, and move the argument forward away from species inappropriate kibble and processed food. Feeding would be really, really good. So there you go. I'm going to sign out. I'm going to say it's been great talking to you. Thank you for listening, and you're very welcome to contact me at my email, which is nickthompson@holisticvet.co.uk. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.